All right, let's see if we get some agreement on that, or maybe some dissent from our next guest, the senior writer from SI.com, Ian Thomsen. Ian, the Pacers' great start and a win tonight over Miami. Does it mean something long term? And obviously, I'm guessing it means more to Indiana to have home court in the Eastern Conference playoffs than it might the Heat. But Indiana obviously is doing their best to show that the great season they had a year ago, they're carrying it over very, very well so far.
Oh, absolutely. I do agree. Miami's the best team. And, unless something crazy happens, I think you just got to pick Miami to get out of the East. Paul George has been terrific for the last calendar year. But, when you look back at what LeBron James has had to go through for years to learn how to do what he does in the playoffs now, we can't take for granted that Paul George will be that same kind of player in the playoffs in the Game 6 and Game 7 of an Eastern Conference Finals. We know absolutely LeBron James will. The first 7-8 years of his career, he wasn't that guy. And I just think that is a huge advantage for Miami. Even if they have to win on the road, I still like them with the advantage. Now let's see. Maybe Dwayne Wade is really hurting in the playoffs again, and maybe Paul George is playing great. A lot can change, but right now you have to. I just think the default position is that Miami is going to be in the finals.
I got a question for you, Ian. I'm having this debate on Twitter a lot with a lot of different fans. To me, there's a battle for the second best player in the NBA. You've got Kevin Durant, you've got Chris Paul, and I think Paul George is in the conversation. And after watching him play live versus the Blazers just over a week ago, I went ahead and said I thought he was the second best player in the NBA, LeBron being the hands-down best player. What's your stance on those guys and just that group of players that's battling for that second seat in the league?
Well, right now, Antonio, I agree with you that he is playing better than anybody else except for LeBron. But if I was going to phrase it, he's the second best player in the league. To me, again, he has to prove more. Kevin Durant got his team to the NBA Finals and came close. I mean, they had a chance in some of those games against Miami in the NBA Finals. To me, he's the second best player right now based on what he's been able to accomplish, what he can do, what you can count on, his track record. Paul George could be that guy. Because of all the different things he can do at both ends of the floor, but I just think he has to prove more before I would put him ahead of Kevin Durant. But it's a real interesting conversation to have. And if you phrase it right now, who's playing better right now? Then it's true, Paul George. But in the big picture, who cares who's playing well right now? In the first couple months of the NBA season, and whenever you get into the spring. I always play this little game with myself. I can never remember what happened in November and December. When we're in the playoffs, it's just so hard to remember what happened in the first couple of months of the season, and that kind of tells you it almost doesn't matter in a way.
Ian Thomsen of SI.com with us on Trailblazers Courtside in the latest SI.com power rankings. Among the first 12 teams, 10 of them, not surprisingly, from the Western Conference. Indiana and Miami, the only teams from the East that are represented. And the Blazers are sitting at number 1. Now, you were just saying, Ian, that what happens in November and December doesn't necessarily mean that much. For the Blazers, though, how important is it to be sitting at 18-4, best road record in the NBA, best record in the Western Conference, second best record in the entire NBA, with some quality wins to this point in time? How important is it for them, a team that is not a perennial playoff power as some of the other groups or some of the other teams in this group in the top part of your SI.com rankings? How important is it for them, the start that they have had?
Oh, it's huge. If they'd started poorly, could they have turned it around over the second half of the year and been playing this well? I think that would have been difficult for them as the other teams, the expected contenders are rounding into shape. So on a couple of fronts, I mean, right now Portland could basically go 500 the rest of the year and still be in a real strong position going into the playoffs. But the other thing is, for a young team to have this kind of confidence over the course of the year, it's just enormous for for Damian Lillard and Batum and for their bench to come together so quickly, and then for Aldridge I think he's always felt like he was better than people thought, and now he's got something to defend. Kind of, he's got his team off to this early start, and it's on him to make sure that they keep moving forward, that they remain in contention. And that's a great thing for him. He's never been in that position before of not just playing to prove himself, but to prove his team. And the fact that he'll be doing that all season long now is a huge thing for him. And when you look at the team, they don't have to do it this year. They don't have to go all the way this year. It's not their one and only chance like it is for Indiana, I think. This is the one year that they'll have the chance to have Danny Granger and Paul George and maybe Scola on the same team. But for Portland, they'll be able to keep building off this. So it's just huge to start this way. What I was saying, that you can't remember what happens in the early months of the year, that's not true about Portland. I think we'll all remember going into the playoffs that Portland was the surprise team in the early months of the year, and arguably right up there with Indiana and Miami.
No, I asked you the question a moment ago, Ian, about Paul George and second best player in the league. At that power forward position right now, is there a better player in the league than LaMarcus Aldridge?
Nobody is playing better right now, that's for sure. But I bet if we were to ask LaMarcus, should we say that you're the best power forward in the NBA? I would bet he would say no. Out of respect for what Tim Duncan's done, what Dirk Nowitzki's done, and that they're right there doing great work for their teams now. And obviously Tim Duncan's minutes are being spared to get them through for when the games really matter. But I would bet if you were to ask him, he would say, the last couple of years I've had and the strong couple of opening months, they don't put me ahead of Duncan or Nowitzki, because when I saw LaMarcus a few weeks ago when he came through Boston, all he was talking about was getting his team deep into the playoffs now, because that's something he hasn't done. And if that's what's important to you, then I think your perspective is really good, that you have a long ways to go before you can displace some of those champions.
Ian, we've already seen some deals in the early part of this NBA season. Everybody points to December 15th as the date that you can start trading guys that were signed as free agents in the offseason. What kind of activity do you think we're going to see as teams have gotten past a quarter of the season, started to figure out what they have, maybe figured out what they still need to have? What teams do you think maybe are going to be active, maybe some names of guys that you think could be on the move?
Well, we'll hear all sorts of crazy rumors about the Knicks, that they're going to be able to trade Lamari Stoudemire for LeBron James or something. So we'll be reading all about that, and none of it will happen. And then for sure, Houston will be dangling a Zeke and see if they can get something for him. The most interesting one to me is going to be what happens in Boston with Rajon Rondo. I would think by the time he comes back, the Celtics are going to be a 500 team, or maybe even above 500. They've got a tremendous schedule this month, only 3 road games this month. And if he's back on the floor by the end of the month, they'll be in a position, if he's healthy, to enable him to put up big numbers for an overachieving team. And then we'll see if a market builds for him going into the deadline. I would think a team like Houston would love to have him. Obviously, the Knicks would love to have him, but they don't have anything to trade for him.
What? You wouldn't give up Amari Stoudemire?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, people are dying to take on Amari Stoudemire. The only team that ever wanted to give him money was the Knicks, because they totally whiffed on LeBron and Wade and Bosh in 2010. So. Yeah, there definitely will be movement. I would think there's going to be more activity this year than there was last year at the deadline.
Speaking of the Nets, that whole dysfunctional family there, is there any hope for that situation to turn around as they hopefully get to some better health for Deron Williams and Brook Lopez. But it seems like already the age of Garnett and Pierce starting to show even more so than they did in Boston last year. But is that situation salvageable for Jason Kidd in his first NBA season as a head coach?
I think they have a chance to turn things around and in this terrible conference make the playoffs. It's almost like the second division of the NBA, the East. After Indiana and Miami, it's like the European soccer leagues. And so they have a chance to get into the playoffs, avoid relegation. They have a chance to do that. But when I think about Garnett and Pierce appearing to just fall off the face of the earth, to me, they went from a very heavily structured team in Boston and a coach who knew what he was doing to a coach that doesn't know what he's doing in Brooklyn. And they just don't have any structure there. I mean, if Jason Kidd can't manage the roles on his own coaching staff and has to fire the most expensive assistant coach in history, how can anyone think that he's assigned the roles properly for his players? If he can't manage his own staff, how can he manage his team? And I think that's the real problem with them. And I would think if they don't turn things around, there's going to be more and more pressure on Nets management, Billy King, to replace Jason Kidd.
Wow.
Yeah, that would be.
Would Billy King be on in the firing line at that point?
Well, I think that's why you would hear. You'll begin to hear about him replacing Jason Kidd.
Better him than me.
But it's him. Because somebody's got to be held accountable. $189 million there. It makes Paul Allen look like a cheapskate. and they've been awful. And you can't say it's because they lack talent. It's because the players don't know how they're supposed to play together. And it's inexcusable. It was silly to hire a guy with no experience to coach a team like this, and now we're seeing that coaching really does matter in the NBA.
Ian, thank you so much for the visit as always. We anticipate that we'll be seeing you in Portland before too long if the Blazers continue this nice start to their season, and we'll look for your great stuff as always on SI.com in the interim.
I appreciate it. I grew up in Portland, so I love getting back. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
See you soon. Thank you.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Ian Thomsen, senior writer of SI.com. Again, this week, check it out. Matt Dollinger, one of his associates, putting together the power rankings with the Blazers sitting at number 1. Not a bad spot.